Honestly, taking a step back over the past year, it's pretty nuts how much my life has changed. It can all be derived from becoming a development YouTuber. I've went from working a job I didn't really enjoy to now a job that I thoroughly enjoy with a pretty sweet side hustle, a startup, and an incredible amount of friends that I have made. And this route that I have taken might not be for everybody, but for me, it is the best decision that I have ever made. Now, this was not an easy task by any means. It was a pretty big mess for most of the time. So, for anybody out there that wants to replicate what I have done, I want to give you a guide of how to become a development YouTuber. And even though it will be geared towards development YouTubers, it can be applied to any type of niche. So I have narrowed it down to 3 key pieces of advice that are the most valuable to find success in YouTube, at least from my experience. The last one is the most powerful tip that I heard and applied when I first started. A little side note, I think these can be used for growing many things, but definitely for YouTube as well. At the end of this video, I'll go over some actionable steps that you can take if you want to follow along a similar path that I have taken. So let's get into it. I think the first big step that seems like the hardest step of them all is to just start. Us humans as a species have a really easy time rationalizing most of our actions. And I feel like most of us, including me, have a really easy time rationalizing our procrastination. One of the biggest reasons people don't start is because they don't have the right equipment. Some other favorite excuses of mine are you can already find this on Google, or I'm awkward and my voice is weird. But let me quickly debunk those before we move forward. 1, you don't need the right equipment. For example, if you look at some of my first videos, the equipment is not as important as you think. The only thing you really need is a computer. Then when you get to a point where you can afford it, the first thing you should invest to is a microphone. That's what I did with this microphone over here. Audio quality is the most important thing in videos. For the second excuse, you can find anything on Google, but you won't find it exactly the way that you explain it. Your method of teaching might be the most clear method to lots of people. And for that last point, I'm still awkward, my voice is still weird, but after some time you just become numb to it. Anyways, the point I'm trying to make here is that you'll always be able to rationalize and find excuses, but if you can find yourself to get that first video out, and especially if you start being consistent with it, you will see results. And that leads me into point number 2, consistency. I truly believe this is the secret to success in anything. Now, you probably have heard about consistency before, but I would like to add one key point. Consistently improve one thing about each piece of content that you release, and over the long run, your content will become a lot better. We talked about how getting started is the hardest part. At the beginning, that one thing might be to improve just your comfortableness on the camera. And maybe for the first 5 to 10 videos, you're just improving how comfortable you are talking to a camera. But then start taking things a little broader. Look at all the things in the video creation process and see what you can improve for each video. And trust me, there's so many things that can be improved. For example, video creation workflow, thumbnail design, editing skills, better intros. And there's so much more with creating content, you will never run out of things to improve. For me, for example, in the last video, you might have seen that the video looks a little bit nicer. I tweaked the lighting, ISO, camera shutter speed, and a little bit of color grading. And then I've been trying to become a better storyteller since that's at the core of what most of content is, even for tutorials. There is always something to improve and something to learn, and if you are able to be consistent with releasing consistently improving content, you'll definitely be able to see results. Now, this last point probably isn't anything new that you haven't heard a bunch of times, especially if you're into self-improvement like me. This is to get out of your comfort zone. The biggest factor that stops people from doing this, especially in development, is imposter syndrome. This is why this step is so difficult. I assure you, I still get imposter syndrome big time, but I've tried my best to not let that stop me from trying out new things. I wasn't always like that though. Only when I saw the initial videos getting some traction, I figured out that this is what I want to do in life. And I said screw it, and I would do whatever it takes to become successful in content creation. I accepted every offer for a talk and things like that, put myself out there as much as I can. And I remember one of the scariest things was doing a live presentation at a Flutter event. And I was right before John Ryan, who's an actual Flutter developer at Google. I felt like the biggest phony, but I still did it. But we can take this point even further back. I was not comfortable at all making videos with myself. My voice was weird, I didn't know anything about editing or content creation, but I still put myself out there. Then I did some live streams, which were terrifying. And slowly but surely, I was getting more and more comfortable with what I was doing. But the initial steps of stepping out of the comfort zone were the hardest, but also the most impactful. So those are the 3 biggest factors that have led to what I have achieved. Just getting started, consistently improving at least one thing, and getting out of the comfort zone as much as I can. But let's get into some actionable steps that you can take if you want to start on a similar trajectory as I did. The first and only step before the just start step is to figure out your niche. When I started, there wasn't that many Flutter channels, so Flutter was a small enough niche. Now you might need to go more specific, maybe UI with Flutter or reviewing Flutter packages, anything like that. Figure out what could set you apart. My goal to set myself apart was to be able to explain Flutter topics simpler than anybody else. Now, step 2 is to just start. Create that channel, post that first video. Don't worry about the perfect channel name or the profile picture. Just get that first video out there. Then start improving those things as you go. In my opinion, using your name and pictures is one of the best channel names. 3, when you can afford it, buy a microphone. It doesn't need to be anything super fancy, but any microphone that is not your laptop microphone is going to be a lot better. Then point 4 is to keep improving every single video, at least one thing. Here are some examples to choose from. Editing, your profile/branding, your comfortableness with recording, equipment, marketing, collaborations, your whole channel organization with playlists and stuff, the description organization, your video organization, how you start and end videos, stuff like that, your storytelling skills, the thumbnail designs, and there's lots of other things as well. Then once you get a good hang of all of that, step 5, look for ideas for content that will get people excited. Try and experiment with new things like live streaming and stepping out of your comfort zone. Then 6, start expanding your content to other platforms so you're not just stuck on YouTube. And 7, try to enjoy the process and make as many friends as you can. These are a step that I took and they led me to where I am today. If you implement these things, I believe you can see similar results. Just remember, you need to just start, improve, and get out of your comfort zone.